Welcome, everyone, to the Information's TITV. My name is Akash Pasricha. It is Wednesday, July 22nd. Today on the show, we have exclusive reporting that SpaceXAI's AI division, is working on a big new Texas data center. We'll bring on our Elon Musk reporter with more details on that effort. We also have exclusive reporting on how Oracle's push to build new data centers is hitting roadblocks, facing surprise costs and heavy red tape. We'll also take a look at how NeoCloud General Compute is looking beyond NVIDIA as it seeks to build out its NeoCloud offering. And to close out the show, we'll talk to the director and producer behind what could become the very first AI-generated movie to hit theaters. It's going to be a great show, so let's get right on into it. SpaceXAI is working on a new data center in Texas. That is according to exclusive reporting from my colleague Grace Kay, who covers all things Elon Musk. I want to bring on Grace to share more about what we know. Grace, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks.
Okay, so what do we know about this data center that Elon Musk is building in Texas?
Yeah, so they've been talking about a data center expansion to Texas for a few months internally. They've been exploring a few sites and are considering potentially building multiple data centers in the state, including, building it from scratch as a greenfield project and repurposing a warehouse, which is kind of what they did for their first data center in Memphis.
And do we know how big this data center is supposed to be at all?
Yeah, so it's very early, so there's that caveat that this could change, but, based on what I've heard from sources, they wanna build this on the same scale as Memphis or potentially larger.
Hmm. So we've talked about the Memphis facilities a lot on this show, and I think there's there's one that's built and two more that's being built. Is that right?
Yeah, they're all in kind of various stages of being built. There's one that's fully operational, was built in about 122 days, which is kind of a record for the industry. But yes, they're spread out across Memphis and South Haven, nearby.
And I mean, so this would be, I guess, the fourth facility that SpaceX AI would be working on. I mean, let's talk about the demand for SpaceX AI's AI products. I mean, Grok, I think you've reported as well that demand has been a little iffy on that front. So, talk a little bit about how they're considering building all these facilities when it's looking a little iffy for Grok right now.
Yeah, I think, we're seeing these compute deals with Anthropic and Google, and I think that's something that SpaceXAI has kind of realized is their secret sauce, is they're really good at building these data centers really quickly. Like I said, the 122 days for the first one was pretty unheard of in the industry. So I think they're seeing the capacity from other companies that are willing to pay, large amounts of money to rent this compute. So yes, Grok maybe doesn't have as much demand as some of the other AI companies right now. But Elon Musk has indicated that they're going to continue to work on that. But also, there's this subset of the business where they can make a lot of money on their ability to build these data centers quickly.
Right. I mean, they can make a lot of money, but it's kind of funny. Like being a neo cloud, I don't think it was the vision for SpaceX AI to begin with, and so in some ways, I wonder why keep going. I don't know. I wonder if people on the ground, if they're telling you, like, um, is this the new vision for the company? Really? Is it just something that they are pushing ahead with because Elon is telling them to? Like, what's the strategy here?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely part of, like, the Elon Musk vision for the company. He has repeatedly told staff that, like, how they're gonna win the AI wars is by having the most compute. And we've seen with other companies like Anthropic, compute constraints have led them to look elsewhere. So it is an advantage, and it's something that Elon Musk is pursuing. But yes, it's very expensive to build these data centers also, so that's another factor.
Let's talk about the reaction to data centers. So in Memphis, there's been some backlash to these facilities getting built. Are we expecting some of that in Texas as well?
It's hard to say. I mean, Texas is kind of the Wild West for data centers right now, it seems like. A lot of companies are building there. Um, so it's a little early to tell. In Memphis, I think a lot of the backlash has been around their use of turbines, gas turbines to power the data center. And, we'll have to see if that's something they're going to pursue in Texas as well.
Right. Well, it's certainly a story to watch, Grace. I want to thank you for coming on. That is Grace Kay, our Elon Musk reporter here at the information. Oracle's data center build continues, and the information has new reporting on multi-billion-dollar surprise costs that have come up through the process. I want to bring on Ann Davis Vaughan, author of the Information's AI Infrastructure newsletter, to walk us through what she found. Ann, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Akash. Great to be here.
Okay, so let's talk about where Oracle is at with its data center build. You had some reporting on how that build specifically is going in New Mexico. What did you find?
So, Akash, the New Mexico project is very important for Oracle. It's one of its big five Stargate projects. And the key question here is whether it's going to get power to this site where construction is already underway and a lot of money is already being spent. And it has gone through some pretty extraordinary steps to try to get a clear path to power. And all of a sudden, it doesn't look like what it's done is going to be enough.
So how does it plan, or how's it trying to fix the power issue then?
So it was planning to do an off the grid natural gas power plant. There were concerns both about the pollution from the natural gas power as well as greenhouse gas emissions. And it switched abruptly in April to a natural gas fuel cell option with Bloom Energy. Um, it also took some extraordinary efforts to move a pipeline, but in very recent days, the Environment Department in New Mexico has said, "We're not sure we're ready to give an air permit. We're going to, push out some hearings on that." And the land commissioner in New Mexico has, for a second time, rejected a pipeline route. And this means that it could take longer to come up with solutions that could get this project up and running.
What does all this mean for the costs of development then? I mean, this new approach that they've embarked on with Bloom Energy, and then whatever they need to do to satisfy the local governments. I presume this means that costs are going up here. What's going on?
Costs are going up, and basically what we're finding with all of these AI mega campuses is that what you thought it was going to cost is, it just tends to go up, and it's more than you really bargained for to begin with. Fuel cells are a more expensive solution just on their face. It's probably, in at least 1 billion, maybe more, of expense compared with the old natural gas design. And more interestingly, fuel cells need to run continuously or they degrade. So it's not as easy to switch to cheap solar power, for example, on a day when it's sunny, and that is a better way to get your power. And so both the delays and the form of energy are a more expensive thing for Bloom, and so is just waiting every week, every month, to get power online to their site, and it is something that investors are watching carefully.
So in your column, you talked about this idea of power flexibility being something that all these data center companies are working for. And so the way I understand it here is by using fuel cells, they basically have less of that flexibility because kind of like how we've talked about, and this is an analogy, so tell me if I'm getting it correctly, but we talk about routing to different AI models and which model is cheaper, depending on what the level of sunlight is or what the energy situation is on the
Right.
ground. You can also route to different sources of energy to lower your costs, but by using fuel cells, you can't actually do that. Is that right?
Yeah, you can add other forms of power to any site, but there's there is a cost with a site with fuel cells that the equipment would degrade if you turn it on and
Right.
off, frequently. And these off-grid power sites do have to take on a lot of their own equipment burden. They can't rely on the grid to be there for the little extra power and to provide that stability. They're having to do all of it themselves. They're pretty expensive engineered solutions.
Right. Okay, so that's what's going on in New Mexico. You also wrote about some. I mean, we'll talk about Oracle and we'll get to Meta in a second. What's going on in Wisconsin?
So Wisconsin is another big area of AI development, and Oracle has another very important project there in Port Washington, Wisconsin. The public regulators, the state regulators of the grid, have been insistent that the expenses of building more energy generation as well as transmission need to fall on Oracle and its partners. And Oracle has gone to court in Wisconsin challenging some requirements about how much collateral it has to post because of its credit rating. And it is just another example of more expenses coming on these projects than perhaps the hyperscalers anticipated.
So you mentioned credit rating. Let's talk about these delays. Is it impacting Oracle's credit rating right now? How is that?
So S&P downgraded Oracle's credit rating to a notch above junk earlier this month and is citing a lot of ongoing, upfront costs that Oracle has to pay for, while the reward of these data centers and the revenue that they'll generate is years away, as they continue to build. It's a very expensive endeavor, and when you are the company that has more financial strain than perhaps the big four hyperscalers, that does mean that your capital costs could be higher, and that is S&P's concern that Oracle has quite a lot of upfront investment.
So are investors fretting then? I mean, a notch above junk seems pretty close to junk. I
Yeah,
think
I mean, from
in
what I
in
hear,
my limited understanding of credit ratings, that doesn't seem so good.
some of the investors I've spoken with don't expect that it would go down to junk, but we're all watching it carefully. And yes, I think investors are worried about capital costs as well as delays. You know, the uh, the fact that you have a campus but can't get power to it does trigger a lot of concerns. It doesn't mean that they won't figure it out. Oracle has been uh, you know doing all kinds of you know in the minute pivots, both with public opinion and trying to make their case directly, to the people of New Mexico, as well as trying to change the design so that it would work. It's very important for them to get this back on track.
Right, and I mean, we should say I'm looking at the stock chart here. I mean, the stock is down 35% this year. Last year alone, it's 47% down. So, I mean, it seems like investors are certainly paying attention to these challenges that you've been writing about. Um, I want to ask you one more question. We just talked to Grace about the pushback that SpaceXAI has been seeing for its data centers in Memphis. Now it's pursuing another opportunity in Texas. What does the pushback look like locally for Oracle in New Mexico and Wisconsin, where it's building its facilities right now?
It's been an extraordinary kind of shift from, just the focus on, you know, what is this project going to be? Did I have enough input into it? To a lot of fear and concern about the impacts on land, on water, on air, and it's hard. So there's misinformation out there too. But the what is happening in New Mexico, it's a water scarce area, and people are concerned about how they're going to manage natural resources. Oracle's sought out their own water source, and will treat their own water source. They're going directly to the public saying, look, we're going to be responsible for paying putting in the infrastructure that we need. Um, you know, Tech companies are doing that around the country. They're trying to make that same case in Wisconsin, but somehow still, push back on how much collateral they've got to post. So it's a delicate dance in each place, and each location is different. Um,
Can I
there's
can I ask you one question, Anne? I mean,
Yeah.
we're so focused on Oracle. You wrote about Meta as well in your newsletter. Are the challenges that Oracle is facing, is this an Oracle problem or is this a data center build wide problem? Are these similar problems that Meta is facing in its states as well, wherever it's building?
Most of these issues go beyond Oracle. Meta has had, some projects that are going pretty well. They've also got some questions that they're having to answer. We wrote in this piece about a project that Meta is doing in partnership with a local utility in El Paso, Texas, very close to the New Mexico project, but in Texas, where they've come up with what may be a less cost intensive and less water intensive way to bridge the power till the utility can get power to them. But at the same time, Meta is also juggling a story that has started to I think you'll hear more about on how
Is
they
this
handle
the bacteria
wastewater.
are we getting to the bacteria story? Is that what it is?
We are, yes. So in Cheyenne, Wyoming, Meta has a data center. They were cleaning out some pipes that are supposed to be used for closed loop cooling. The local water utility has alleged that there is a bacteria that got into the water system, the wastewater system, not the drinking water system, and has said that it's traced back to Meta. Meta has appealed a decision saying that it is the source, but there's some mysteries around how it all happened, but it has brought up a lot of questions about what was supposed to be a very big innovation, where these AI data centers use less water but recirculate fluid to cool their data centers. There could be more scrutiny around these closed loop cooling systems and whether the wastewater systems in the communities that they are in are prepared to handle some of the more the buildup that comes from reusing these liquids again and again.
Right.
It's something to watch. I think
Yeah.
it could be an addressable problem, but as you know, it's the public perception that
Yeah, I mean, look,
drives
y
decisions.
and public perception, and as we just talked about with Grace, I mean, 122 days, I think she mentioned, for the one of the Colossus builds in Memphis. I mean, these projects are moving at extraordinary pace, and so
Yeah, but they're slowing
it's hard.
down, Akash. They're
They're slowing
slowing.
down. Yeah, well, that's why the reporting is so important to consider, and certainly the cost overruns. And I want to thank you for coming on. That is Ann Davis Vaughan, author of our AI infrastructure newsletter here at The Information. Our next segment is with our partner, General Compute. We've covered a lot of neoclouds on this show. Most of them rely heavily on NVIDIA. General Compute is taking a different approach. I want to bring on the co-founder and CTO of the company, Jason Goodison, to talk about their strategy. Jason, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I want to start with the big news this morning. So, Anthropic is buying 2 gigawatts of compute from AMD. AMD is investing $5 billion into Anthropic. What did you make of that deal?
Yeah, honestly, I'd love to say this kind of blew the entire game out of the market. But the truth is, we've already started to see deals like this happen, right? So we have Meta that's doing a deal with AMD already. We've got OpenAI that's doing a deal with AMD, and now kind of more of the same. I think the reason is because NVIDIA has such healthy margins that if you're doing AMD and you're kind of neck and neck on inference, maybe you're not as good at training because of the software ecosystem, but you're pretty much neck and neck on inference. Well, you can pencil some of these deals that are just more advantageous for Anthropic because they can save money. Their total cost of ownership would be lower. So it seems obvious, like, why wouldn't they do a deal like this?
And this is the new rack system that AMD has launched this week. I mean, what's your sense on how that rack system, Helios, is going to compete with NVIDIA?
Yeah, I mean, so we're doing alternatives to GPUs, so we're not going to probably buy either of them. But the truth is that these GPU systems are really good at TCO, and TCO is total cost of ownership. Essentially, how fast and how cheaply am I running my AI systems? And so the Vera Rubin and the Helios system are really good at running AI very slow, and so doing it at a cheaper price if you want to run tokens really slow. What we're focusing on as a company is buying alternatives to GPUs that optimize on speed. So what we're looking to do is target 1 to 2,000 tokens per second. And Helios and Vera Rubin are both fantastic machines, and they're going to do really well at helping people compete on price when they want to generate 40 to 50, maybe 150 tokens a second. But fundamentally, that's just not really what we're focused on as a business.
So you're looking at alternatives to GPUs. So who are you working with, and which chips are you going to put in your facilities?
Yes, I mean we've spoken to most of they call these ASICs, right? We've spoken most of these ASIC providers, and the ones that we're the most excited about are Samba chips. So we
Okay.
already have a cluster live with Samba last generation hardware. We already serve models like Minimax about 5 times faster than competitors. We're doing it about 500 tokens per second. But what we're really excited about is the SN50 chip that's coming out at the beginning of next year. We have a large cluster Q1 that's going to come out, and these chips are going to be 20 kilowatt rack draw, so we can basically put them into any existing data center across America. They're going to be able to operate at 1 to 2,000 tokens per second on large frontier models. We're going to be able to put a 10 trillion parameter model on a single rack. So really, when it comes to efficiency and speed, these things really just blow the rest of the competition out of the water, and we're really excited about it.
Why did you pick Samba Nova? I mean, we've had Rodrigo on our show a couple times before. I know that their chip traditionally has been it's been very focused on running open source models from what I recall, and open source open weight models have obviously taken off at least in the conversation the last couple weeks. Was that a reason that you pursued the SN50 and Samba Nova specifically? Were there other reasons that you picked them over some of the other chip company? I mean, there's, let's talk D Matrix, there's Etch, there's Cerebrus. I can never pronounce it properly. Why did you go with Samba Nova?
Yeah, I think the answer is because we think that there's a weird combination here of once in a lifetime opportunity to do frontier level intelligence extremely fast. So when you think about, for example, the difference between dial up internet and broadband, I might be dating myself a little bit here, but sitting and waiting 30 seconds for a page to load it would be considered unacceptable now. But sitting and waiting for 10, 20, maybe even an hour for a coding agent to run would seem par for the course. And that just doesn't seem like something that will happen in the future. So Cerebrus, I think, is a really interesting machine. The engineers there are exceptional. In fact, what you'll find is every ASIC company has an exceptional engineering team because what they're doing is fundamentally just one of the hardest things in the world. And so Cerebrus can run really fast, but we found that there's a bit of a limitation on the model size. And as you scale up to more and more and more of these wafers, the cost just goes through the roof. So if you did want to run a really large model, you'd be serving at just like a cost that you just could not afford to. And so there's a unique combination with Samba Nova where you can run large models extremely fast and actually at a reasonable and competitive price. And so I think that's the sweet spot that we've been waiting for this breakout success of fast inference. And I think we're on the cusp of our broadband moment.
People are talking about open weight models as a way to lower their costs significantly. And I just want to make sure I gut check my understanding of this. Do open weight models, do they use less compute? And also, does that inherently mean that maybe the market size for the chip business and cloud services is lower than we thought?
No, not at all. I think there's a Jevons paradox to this, and I'll get back to the open weight model question. But what we found is that the cheaper the tokens have gotten over time, the more usage has actually happened. And so we're seeing as tokens are getting faster and cheaper to use, you're just using more of them. And you could imagine using a coding agent where you're building a website. Why build one website at a time? Why not build 10 variants of it and pick the one you like the most? These are things that you're just never seeing right now, but I expect to see in the future. And so open weight models, they're really flexible because you can kind of get in there and get dirty and understand how they work and just tune them for your own use cases. And so you're seeing people use them to get even better evaluations, on their private data sets. So let's say you're a company that's doing law AI. You want to be really good at that. So you make a test suite that's optimized on that, and then you use an open weight model. Instead of using one of Anthropic's models, off the shelf, you get to tune something specifically for your use case. And the last thing to say on that too is, let's say you have proprietary data. If you're going to use that with Anthropic, you're sending the data to Anthropic, and you're kind of praying and hoping that Anthropic doesn't just, kind of bake it into their next model, because that's all of your IP gone. And so these open weight models are something people are using to keep their data private, and also get better unit economics and just better AI in general that's optimized on their use cases. And
Right.
that's why we're seeing a big shift to it.
So I want to get back to your decision to not just use Salmonova, but not to use NVIDIA, because we've done some reporting here at the Information that if you look at NVIDIA's share of the inference market, it's actually been going up according to our reporters' estimates and data sources that they've consulted. And so in a world where customers still want more NVIDIA for inference, why then do you still believe that it's wise to not go with an NVIDIA for your offering?
I mean, it's a fantastic question. I think the answer is that we're in a compute dry market, and NVIDIA has really robust supply chains, and they've got basically a head start on everyone. So people need tokens, and they produce tokens, and so it's pretty simple. Give me more tokens. But what I think is going to happen in the future is what we're doing is we're optimizing for where the puck is going, right? Which is we want fast tokens, and this market of fast tokens is just kind of, it's nascent. It's just starting to take off. You've seen the Cerebras IPO, is market indication that people care about this stuff. Obviously, OpenAI is running some of their latest models on Cerebras. So that market is just getting started, and we really want to own that market. So that's where we're going. That's where the puck is going. But AMD and NVIDIA, they're fighting it out here. You're also seeing NVIDIA is theoretically, you could say, subsidizing demand to some degree by doing some of these circular financing deals. And even AMD, now that we're discussing what happened today,
This morning, they invested $5 billion into Anthropic.
so you're seeing subsidization, and
Yeah,
so that's part of the reason that's accelerating it. And these ASIC providers, none of them have the balance sheet to do that. And why would they, right? They're still getting started. Working capital requirements for building ASIC is unbelievable. And so they're just getting started. And so what we're doing as a business is we're partnering with debt financiers to help fund these ASIC chips. And we do not expect that the ASIC is going to underwrite the investment, because they don't have the balance sheet for it. So that's particularly what's difficult about doing what we're doing. That's why we're so early in it, but that's why it's going to grow to where we're going, where the puck is going, essentially.
and you don't think that the Vera Rubin will materially change that game or make people want NVIDIA even more, based on what you're seeing?
Well, I think so. So obviously the Grok acquisition happened, right? So there's only a handful of pieces of silicon in the world that can do fast inference. You've got Cerebras, you've got Grok, you've got Sambinova. The Grok acquisition was an interesting one, and we're starting to see. There was some report from Semi Analysis about how there's some delayed timelines on the Vera Rubin already, for the Grok rack, the Kyber. And that was rejected by the company, so yet to be seen what actually happens there. But the truth is, and not to get too technical here, but the Grok chip is not really the optimal chip for how big models are getting these days. So they put every single thing on the chip. And the difficulty with what they're doing is they're doing what's called attention FFN disaggregation. I don't want to get too into the weeds, but the TLDR on it is that every time they produce a token on a Grok chip, they have to go back and forth to the Vera Rubin rack and back to the Grok chip. So think about it: if you have an 80-layer neural network, you're going to go back and forth 80 times, which is just insane. Whereas on the SN50 chip, what we're going to do is just kind of run the entire decode on this silicon all at the same time. Again, not to get too technical, but the point
Right.
is that the chip is just not optimized for the use case. I think it's going to have a really hard time running large models in particular. And even if it was going to be optimal at it, we're not going to see it for a while. And so these SN50 racks we're getting are air cooled. They're a 20 kilowatt draw. The Kyber racks that we're talking about are up to 600 kilowatts, which is insane. They also use
So basically, what you're saying is the power that is going to be demanded by the Rubin family of chips. I mean, that's and the Grok chips, from what I hear you saying, that's going to be significant. That's going to be a problem that a challenge that NVIDIA will have to deal with, and that's one of the reasons why you've started to diversify away from it, which
exactly.
yeah, I mean, look, we've been talking about it on the show, and I think people are certainly looking for alternatives, and so I think it's certainly a smart strategy. Jason, I want to thank you for coming on and speaking with us. That is Jason Goodison, the co-founder and CTO of General Compute here on TITV. Amazon-backed AI studio Fable is producing and distributing the first AI-generated visual feature film to hit U.S. theaters. The movie is called Gods Don't Give Gifts, and it is by YouTube creator Zack London. Joining me now is Fable CEO Edward Saatchi and director of the film, Zack London. Welcome to the both of you. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So, Zack, tell me about the movie.
Well, there's a lot to dig into there, but the gist of it is Gods Don't Give Gifts is a sci-fi anthology. It's set in this world where consciousness can be swapped between bodies, memories can be bought and sold, whole lifetimes can kind of be downloaded and flashed in a moment. Basically, we've solved death and all the other, ailments that hold us down. But it follows 4 different stories, kind of both like the victims and the beneficiaries of this technology. So that's everything from the creature that has had sentience thrust upon it, to an android chasing phantom memories, to a fighter that's been kind of thrust into another body, to a world weary aristocrat who's lived 10,000 lives and is completely jaded by it.
And
But
it's
yeah,
and it's all AI. What is AI? What isn't AI? Walk us through that.
Yeah. So what is not AI is the writing and the script. Myself and a co-writer wrote the whole thing. The voices, we use actual live voice actors for everything that we record in the studio. The score itself, we used 3 different musicians to score the film, and then all the audio and SFX is a team of Foley artists. So to be clear, the visuals are AI, albeit painstakingly constructed. And then basically all the audio and the actual script and directing and editing and post production is human.
And I mean, I want to ask you about how you actually make this. I mean, we talk about models a lot on this show, and we have some footage of past stuff that you've made using AI on your YouTube channel. But what models are you actually using? What applications are there?
Yeah. So I mean, if you cover the tech stack, everything's in flux like all the time, which makes it really hard to pin down any concrete workflow. Over the course of production, it's changed dramatically. You have months where it feels like decades worth of features and tools are just released like relentlessly. So it's hard to pin down an exact tool set, but I would say at its core, we have the kind of bread and butter image generation tools. Midjourney, I would say, is pretty critical to all of it. And then for animation, very much Kling and Seed Dance. And then, a whole suite of other tools, both AI and non-AI, to kind of stitch it all together and kind of modify it to the point where we feel like we've achieved what I hope is this like very distinct and differentiated aesthetic that really kind of captures the world and tells a story through the lens that we want to tell it with.
So mostly right now it's those two: Midjourney, Seed Dance, I mean these are tools I mean Midjourney I've heard of, but I've not heard of the other two. I guess those. Which models are those using?
Seed Dance is by far the market leader right now in animation. That's ByteDance's animation tool.
Got it.
And then we also use Kling as well,
Kling.
which is
Okay,
yeah.
got it. So Edward, tell me a little bit about the plan for distribution for this
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah. So, you know, right from the very beginning, for those of us who've been excited about AI cinema and AI movies, we've been waiting for the moment that a film would be good enough to go out in the cinemas, because you can string together 90 minutes of anything and try to push it out there. This is actually a masterpiece. It's moving, it's touching, it's witty, and it's the kind of film that I think deserves to carry on its shoulders the kind of goal of introducing the ticket paying public to AI movies. And so we're going to be on Friday, October 30th. You're going to be able to go to your local multiplex, get some popcorn, get some Diet Coke, and watch the movie. And
Is there? I mean, is there a major movie studio involved in this release? Have you been approached by
so
them?
Yeah, we are talking to different studios, but we're also using the Iron Lung model. So Iron Lung is by Markiplier. He's a big YouTuber, and in January he distributed his film Iron Lung in theaters, using a strategy that kind of harnessed the attention and the excitement of his fan base on YouTube. And Zack, across his channels, has had 600 million views within his world. I think with Obsession and Backrooms, you're kind of seeing two films that had a cumulative budget of 11 million, YouTube
Right.
filmmakers with a cumulative revenue of 900 million. So the distributors, the other distributors, the studios, and the exhibitors are now, whereas they were slightly resistant to what Iron Lung was doing in January, now there's a frenzy of, how do we actually see if we can harness YouTube excitement around an IP and a filmmaker like Zack into cinemas, and that
So
it seems as though
you Ed,
people.
did you guys decide to embark on this project? Was this before or after the smash success of Backrooms and Obsession?
Well, funnily enough, we both together went to the cinema to see Iron Lung. This was kind of 9 months ago, so the seed was maybe planted there. I think you've got two trends, right? Like one is two YouTube filmmakers crushing Star Wars Mandalorian, and showing that maybe there's a kind of changing of the guard and changing of the generations, and then you've got AI. So I think we were partly, encouraged by Obsession Backrooms, but also, that this does need to be a film that shows the world why we've all been so excited about AI. This is an indie. It's a kind of, it's an experiment. This would be the first. This would be the first time people will see a trailer for an AI movie in theaters before other movies. First time for a Rotten Tomatoes score for an AI film, Metacritic score. But I think Zach and I both are just really passionate about this art form being taken seriously and having a very high bar, which I think Gods Don't Give Gifts certainly rises to, of actually making a
Zach,
great work of art.
how much is it costing you to make this movie? I mean, the models they're pretty expensive.
Yeah, I mean the models, it depends on what model you're using, but yeah, it's certainly not free. And then of course there's personnel cost. I mean, I think there's a narrative out there that unfortunately is like, we made this $500 million Hollywood budget film for $50 in a weekend. And it's kind of rage baits. But I think the reality is to kind of pull something off at the caliber that we're pulling it off at, or like we're aiming for. I mean, it takes a team to do it. I have a full team of visual designers, animators, a post-production crew, that includes editing, sound mixing, color grading, voice actors, obviously, musicians to score it. So it's not just a matter of credits. There's the human involvement there as well, the actual people to build this. And while it's true that you can generate things really quickly, we've been working on this for 7 or 8 months now. It's quite a big production. So I don't really want to kind of downplay the effort it takes. And I think it's
So,
important to kind of like dispel that misnomer that, this is some instantaneous type and movie into a box and boom, we have a feature film that we can just, slap on the big screen.
so in other words, when we hear so much on this show, at least of the models and the compute costing a ton. I mean, for you, the major expense has still been payroll for all your staff, and that's been the majority of the expense compared to the cost of actually using the models right now.
Yes.
Okay. And how do you sort of think about, ownership structure, copyright, the underlying training data? This is the big question in Hollywood right now. How do you think about that as a creator yourself?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be, uh, the world's foremost scholar on IP as it pertains to AI, but I think of the precedents that have been established, it's basically that any kind of raw output from AI that's not sufficiently modified is not really copyrightable, right? If you haven't really kind of demonstrated any form of authorship or ownership or modification of it, right? Whereas where it's landed in favor of those using AI is if you can kind of demonstrate that you've sufficiently modified it to the extent that you've made it your own. So if I were to just generate something, let's say raw out of a Google product or a ByteDance product or Midjourney, I couldn't make the claim that this is mine. But when we factor in, that every character is the consequence of, hundreds of images across different tools, photo bashed together, manipulated across a variety of tools, voice acted based on scripts that are human written, cast into other animation tools that are then edited and composited together. I think we've gone kind of so far past the benchmark of what demonstrates like human authorship or modification that to me, it seems unequivocally that this lies well within what is kind of copyrightable content that we've created and can kind of claim ownership over.
Right. Ed, I want to ask you a question about the deal that Netflix has done with Ben Affleck's company, and it sort of relates to what you're trying to build at Fable with showrunner as well. I mean, what do you think Netflix ultimately wants to do with that? And you've sort of pinned yourself to this future of interactive media where audiences can sort of tell platforms, hey, this is what I want to see. I want to be inserted in this type of storyline. And the question I have for you is, I mean, as a viewer, I mean, sure, I could say that I want an action movie. I want, a rom-com, whatever. But I don't actually know what I want, I think. And so it sort of leads me to the question, like, yeah, sure, you know, and, then I get into the question about, like, echo chambers and, if people are just watching more of stuff that they already know to have existed. So, I mean, how do you think about all those meaty questions at the center of what you're building?
Yeah. So, I think that deal with Ben Affleck's company was a big turning point, more about visual effects. So, how do we make visual effects changes or, post post production, how do you tweak something? How do you change something? I think that's valuable. But yeah, we've tried to be a little bit more radical about what the implications for this new technology are, in that it's innately remixable. And I think that outside of any debate about, when's it going to happen, consumer behavior and all that, if you don't listen to what a medium is telling you about itself, you're going to go wrong. So people at the early days of cinema, they made filmed plays, film theater, and they weren't listening to what the medium was doing. And the radicals who said, no, this is montage, this is completely different. You can compress time, you can create subliminal effects in the audience by intercutting. You don't just put a camera down and film things. Those were the ones who won. So that's our theory as well, that when you truly look at the medium, it is remixable, it is interactive, and you should follow that and follow your instincts. So we see a Netflix of AI where people create their own shows, where people create derivative work. And actually, alongside this announcement, people are going to be able to play and we're going to do a $20,000 contest around the Gossip Goblin IP.
Right.
Any derivative work owned by Zack, owned by Gossip Goblin. Just an experiment to kind of see if that helps for a start, helps the launch of the film, more marketing, more assets, more content, more fan engagement, but also if it leads to some interesting work within the universe.
Zach, Kane Parsons has said that he's not really a fan of AI and Hollywood. How does that make you feel, given that he's very much been a trailblazer for content for YouTubers entering Hollywood?
That's cool. He's entitled to his opinion.
Have you met him? Have you talked to him?
I've never spoken to him.
Okay.
I can't say that we've been acquainted.
But I mean,
I don't think
how does that make you feel? I mean, he's been a trailblazer so far, at least in the industry.
sure. Then plenty of blazers have embraced AI. Look, I think it's funny. I mean, from both sides of the aisle, there's a lot of like provocations. Obviously, it's a fiery issue to say the least. And so you see Neil Blomkamp or Darren Aronofsky or even George Lucas going out and saying, "Hey, look, it's coming. We're going to embrace it in one way or another." I totally get the pushback against AI. I think some of it just comes from misinformation, and some of it I think is very well founded. But I think unequivocally saying that it's bad or that it's unequivocally good, I think it just basically takes a nuanced issue and just compresses it down into like it is just a black and white monolithic thing. AI is bad. AI is great. AI is going to kill Hollywood. I think it's not a particularly productive conversation to even get into like those extremes. And people can make polarizing statements for the sake of it, but I mean, at the end of the day, I don't really care what Kate Parsons has to say about this.
Right. And is the misinformation, is it around like job loss? Like, what is the misinformation as you see it that's out there right now?
I mean, I think there's a plethora of misinformation. Some of it deliberate, some of it just because, it's like that's what happens with, internet discourse. It just falls into it gravitates towards, the most polarizing extremes. I mean, if we're talking about, for instance, job loss, I think it's basically focusing on a very, very particular niche application of it, which is, hey, our indie filmmakers, basically my whole crew wouldn't be working in this space if it wasn't for basically this ingredient technology that's, enabled myself and others to kind of tell stories at scale that would otherwise not be possible. But if we talk about job loss from AI, that is an issue that goes way beyond generative AI. And now it's basically saying like, hey, creators are at fault for this, as opposed to the, basically like geopolitical, massive kind of implications of AI, as in, the broader space of Anthropic and ChatGPT and Kim 3 and basically the world as we know it, influenced by LLMs and, basically super intelligence. But I think even putting that aside, you get to issues like water usage or land usage or the implications of what are the consequences of this. And then it's like, yeah, it's not, AI is not this perfect tool, but also if you look at like a bar chart of like, well, fuck, golf courses consume like many orders of magnitude more water. Or of all data centers, what amount is actually being used for the purposes of generative AI versus hosting the fucking 24 hours of content uploaded every, 20 minutes to a platform of just the most inane, get ready with me videos. So I think it's kind of cherry picking it, which is like, yes, there are many flaws in AI. From any angle we look at it, there's consequences as there are for any new technology. But it seems that clearly this is Gen AI is just kind of poking out in a very obvious place to kind of project all of our fears and anxieties and tensions about what is this kind of strange and kind of sometimes sinister new technology.
Right. And what I hear you saying is it's, if the tool exists, then this is sort of creators trying to figure out how to live in this new world where this technology exists, which, certainly is a good point. I want to ask you
Amazing.
say that again?
Go on.
No, I was going to ask, I want to take us home here. Hey, I've seen like 2 horror movies in my life, Zach. Halloween 1, Halloween 2. I was in 10th grade. They scared me. I have never watched a horror movie since then. Why are they having a moment right now with audiences, do you think? Certainly among the YouTube creators.
That's a great question. I don't think that Gods Don't Give Gifts is a horror movie per se, though it is coming out on Halloween. So, I can see how that might suggest it. It could perhaps be perceived as a horror film. It could be perceived as a cautionary tale. It could just be perceived as just cool, speculative sci-fi. Why are horror movies having a moment? I don't know. That's a bigger conversation that we probably don't have time for. I do think that the horror genre is like, lends itself to smaller budgets. And so therefore it's kind of more open to experimentation on a smaller budget. And I think actually that's kind of what to me is so exciting about AI in the context of sci-fi, which is, you would need a prohibitively large budget to pull off what we're doing at the scale and scope and polish that we're executing it on. There is no indie sci-fi genre. And if there is, unfortunately, you probably don't want to watch it. And so I think that the same way that obviously horror is having a moment, building off of that, the fact that sci-fi can now kind of be opened up to the broader world, that kind of more ambitious and out there stories can be told, especially now where we can kind of tell a story that I think is actually like quite heady and weird and cerebral, but with the kind of visual polish of I hate to be like use this term, but like a blockbuster film aesthetic. But it's a Trojan horse. Within that, there's I think a much cooler messaging than audiences might be used to from a film that looks like this.
Great. Well, I want to thank you both for coming on. It's certainly a fascinating topic. That is Edward Saatchi and Zack London here on TITV. That does it for today's show. A reminder, we're on this stream Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. If you can't make it then, episodes are available on theinformation.com, on our YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to follow us on social media, on X, on Instagram, on TikTok, and on LinkedIn. I am already excited for our next show tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Bye-bye for now.